Hush now, little one, the day is done. My God!
March 3rd, 1876. Clear blue sky. Rebecca Crouch heard a splat behind her. She turned around and saw chunks of raw flesh falling from the sky. Welcome to Don't Forget About Us, where we uncover the forgotten stories of American history. Stories that textbooks erased, newspapers buried, and time forgot. I'm your host, and today we're diving into one of the strangest events ever recorded on American soil. Bath County, Kentucky. Spring of 1876. The Crouch family farm sat just outside the tiny settlement of Olympia Springs, surrounded by rolling hills and dense forests. This was frontier territory, rough, isolated, and still healing from the Civil War that had torn through Kentucky just 12 years earlier. Rebecca Crouch was 54 years old. A mother, grandmother, and survivor. She'd lived through war, seen battles fought on her own land, and buried neighbors who never came home. Life on the frontier had taught her to be tough. But nothing could prepare her for what was about to happen. That morning started like any other. Rebecca and her grandson Alan were outside making soap, a tedious but necessary chore. You'd boil water, add lye and animal fat, and stir for hours until it thickened. It was boring work, but it kept your hands busy and your mind quiet. The sky was perfectly clear. Not a single cloud. Temperature was mild for early March, around 50 degrees. Birds were singing. Spring was coming. Alan was helping his grandmother stir the soap kettle when something hit the fence behind them. Then another. And another. Rebecca froze. She knew that sound. It was the sound of something wet, something heavy, something wrong. Alan Crouch looked up at the sky and shouted the words that would echo through history. "Grandma, it's snowing." But it wasn't snow. Chunks of raw flesh were falling from the clear blue sky, raining down on the farm like some biblical plague. Pieces ranged in size from tiny fragments no bigger than snowflakes to strips as large as a human finger. They landed on the fence, splattered against the ground, stuck to tree branches, covered the grass. Rebecca's first thought was pure horror. My husband and son have been torn apart. Her husband Alan and their son William had left that morning for Frenchburg, about 10 miles away. In that split second, Rebecca's mind went to the worst place imaginable, some terrible accident, some violent attack, some catastrophe that had literally shredded them to pieces and scattered them across the sky. This wasn't an irrational fear. 12 years earlier, in 1864, the Battle of Mud Lick had been fought on their property. Confederate and Union soldiers had clashed right where she stood. She'd seen bodies torn apart by cannon fire. She'd helped bury the dead. The trauma was still there, buried but never gone. For a moment, Rebecca couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Just watched pieces of flesh falling from nothing. The meat shower lasted exactly 2 minutes. 2 minutes of unexplainable horror. When it finally stopped, the farm was covered. The fence posts had meat stuck to them. The bushes were draped with strips of tissue. The ground was littered with chunks of flesh that looked fresh, wet, still pink in color. By one estimate, about half a bushel of meat had fallen, roughly 18 liters worth. Miss Robinson, a schoolteacher who was boarding with the Crouch family, witnessed the entire event from inside the house. She later testified that she saw it with her own eyes, that it was absolutely real, that she'd never seen anything like it. The farm animals reacted immediately. Chickens rushed out and started pecking at the meat. The pigs sniffed it, then began eating. Whatever it was, the animals recognized it as food. Rebecca and Alan ran inside. She was shaking. Alan was silent, in shock. They waited by the window, terrified that more would fall, terrified of what it meant, terrified that Alan and William were dead somewhere. But the sky remained clear. Blue. Empty. Nothing else fell. 20 minutes later, they heard horses approaching. Rebecca's heart stopped. It was her husband and son. Alive. Unharmed. Confused about why Rebecca was crying. When Alan Crouch Sr. saw the meat scattered across his property, he didn't panic. He was a practical man, a farmer who'd seen strange things in nature. His first instinct wasn't fear, it was evidence. He walked the property collecting samples. He picked pieces off the fence, plucked strips from bushes, gathered chunks from the ground. He placed them carefully in jars, bottles, anything he could find. This wasn't panic. This was documentation. And then two local men did something that would become the most infamous part of the story. They tasted it. Two men, their names lost to history, picked up pieces of the flesh, examined them, smelled them, and then put them in their mouths. Their conclusion: it tastes like mutton or venison. Lamb. Or deer. Not human. Not rotten. Just meat. Word spread fast in Bath County. Within hours, neighbors arrived at the Crouch farm wanting to see the evidence. Some were skeptical, thinking it was a hoax. Others were terrified, believing it was a sign from God, either blessing or judgment, they weren't sure which. The local newspaper, the Bath County News, ran the story immediately. From there, it exploded. The New York Times picked it up. The Scientific American published an article. Papers across the country reported on the Kentucky meat shower. Within weeks, Rebecca Crouch's quiet farm had become the center of a national mystery. Scientists demanded samples. Dr. Leopold Brandeis from Louisville was the first to examine the meat. His conclusion shocked everyone: it wasn't meat at all. He identified it as nostoc, a type of cyanobacteria that expands dramatically when wet and can resemble animal tissue. Nostoc had been known throughout history to appear suddenly after rain, leading to legends of star jelly falling from the sky. Case closed, right? Wrong. Dr. Alan McLean Hamilton, a prominent physician and expert in microscopy, examined different samples and came to a completely different conclusion. Under his microscope, he identified the tissue as lung tissue, specifically from either a horse or, disturbingly, a human infant. His report stated, the samples contain muscular fibers, connective tissue, and what appears to be fragments of pulmonary tissue. Then came the official analysis from the Newark Scientific Association. They examined 9 different samples collected by Alan Crouch. Their findings: 2 samples, lung tissue. 3 samples, striated muscle. 2 samples, cartilage. The remaining samples, inconclusive. This wasn't one substance. It was multiple types of animal tissue. The scientific community split into camps. Some insisted it was nostoc. Others were certain it was real meat. Arguments erupted in medical journals. Theories proliferated. Before we dive into these theories, I want to ask you something. If you're watching this from Kentucky or anywhere else in America, drop a comment telling us where you're from. Have you heard local stories like this, bizarre events that were forgotten or dismissed? Let's uncover them together. Your hometown might have its own mystery worth remembering. The question remained, if this was real meat, where did it come from? No animals were reported missing. No slaughterhouses were nearby. The sky had been completely clear, no storms, no tornadoes, no unusual weather. And 9 days later, something even stranger happened. On March 12, 1876, in London, Kentucky, about 50 miles from Olympia Springs, red corpuscles fell from the sky. Witnesses described them as blood-like droplets that rained down for several minutes. 2 events. 2 weeks. Same state. Coincidence? Or something else? The Kentucky meat shower became one of the most debated scientific mysteries of the 19th century. Every expert had a theory. None of them agreed. Theory 1, the Nostoc hypothesis. Dr. Leopold Brandeis stood firm. He insisted the substance was nostoc, a colonial cyanobacteria that had fooled people throughout history. Here's how nostoc works. When dry, it's almost invisible, tiny, shriveled, harmless. But when it gets wet, it can expand up to 10 times its original size, becoming gelatinous and meat-like in appearance. It's been documented since ancient times, with historical records describing mysterious star jelly that appeared after rain. Brandeis argued that nostoc was already on the crouch property, invisible to the naked eye. When moisture from the morning dew hit it, the bacteria expanded rapidly, creating the illusion of meat falling from the sky. The timing just happened to coincide with Rebecca and Alan being outside. Problem with this theory: multiple scientists examined the samples under microscopes and identified actual animal tissue, muscle fibers, cartilage, lung structures. Nostoc looks nothing like this under magnification. Theory 2, the infant hypothesis. Dr. Alan McLean Hamilton's conclusion was darker. He identified lung tissue that could belong to a horse or a human infant. This theory suggested something horrific: a dead infant, possibly from an illegal abortion or infanticide, had been disposed of in a way that led to its remains being scattered. Perhaps torn apart by animals and then carried by birds, or thrown from a height. The problem: no missing infant was ever reported. No evidence of foul play. And the tissue types were too varied: lung, muscle, cartilage from different animals. Unless multiple bodies were involved, which seemed absurd. Theory 3, the vulture vomit hypothesis, most accepted. This is the theory that most modern scientists accept, proposed by several ornithologists in 1876. Vultures have a unique defense mechanism. When startled or threatened, they vomit. This lightens their body weight so they can take flight quickly to escape predators. Vulture vomit consists of whatever carrion they've been eating, partially digested meat, bones, organs. Here's the proposed scenario. A large group of turkey vultures was flying high over the Crouch farm, circling over a dead animal carcass somewhere nearby. Something startled them: a gunshot, a loud noise, a predator. The first vulture vomited. This triggered a chain reaction, and dozens of vultures vomited simultaneously. The vomited carrion fell from the sky in a concentrated area, exactly the size described, about 100 yards. This explains several key details. While the tissue types varied, vultures had been feeding on multiple dead animals. Why it tasted like mutton or venison: these were common farm animals that died naturally. Why it only lasted 2 minutes: that's how long it takes for a flock to disperse. Why the sky was clear: vultures soar at high altitudes where they're barely visible. The counter-argument: witnesses didn't report seeing birds overhead. But at high altitudes, turkey vultures are almost impossible to spot with the naked eye. They're dark, they soar silently, and they blend into the sky. Theory 4, atmospheric phenomenon. Charles Fort, the famous collector of anomalous phenomena, proposed something more radical. He suggested the meat came from unknown atmospheric conditions, some kind of pressure system or wind pattern that could lift biological material from the ground and deposit it elsewhere. Think of it like a reverse tornado. Instead of pulling things up, certain atmospheric conditions might create a dump of material that had been carried aloft earlier. Fort pointed to other historical cases: fish raining from the sky, frogs falling in storms, unexplained showers of organic material. He argued that mainstream science was ignoring a pattern because they didn't have a framework to explain it. Modern meteorologists have largely dismissed this theory. While waterspouts and tornadoes can pick up fish or frogs from bodies of water and deposit them miles away, there's no mechanism for fresh meat to be lifted, preserved, and dropped without severe decomposition. Theory 5, the hoax hypothesis. Some skeptics claimed the entire event was fabricated. Rebecca Crouch made it up for attention. Or maybe she and her family staged it by throwing meat around the property. This theory collapsed quickly. Too many witnesses saw the meat fall. Miss Robinson's testimony was clear. The scientific samples were real and examined by multiple independent experts. Newspapers sent their own investigators who confirmed physical evidence. Plus, there was no motive. The Crouches didn't profit from the story. They didn't sell the meat. They gave away samples freely to scientists. If it was a hoax, it was the most elaborate, unprofitable hoax in history. By the end of 1876, the scientific community had reached an uneasy consensus. The vulture vomit theory was the most plausible explanation. But the mystery wasn't over. For 148 years, samples of the Kentucky meat shower sat preserved in jars, stored in private collections and university archives. Transylvania University in Lexington, Kentucky, became the primary custodian of the remaining specimens. The meat had been preserved in glycerin and alcohol, techniques common in the 1870s for biological samples. Over time, the samples darkened, hardened, and became increasingly fragile. But they remained intact. In 2024, scientists finally had the technology to answer the question definitively: what was this meat? DNA testing. Transylvania University, in collaboration with the Bath County History Museum, authorized genetic testing of the preserved samples. After 148 years, modern science would solve the mystery. Researchers carefully extracted tissue from the preserved specimens. They ran PCR amplification, attempted DNA sequencing, and tested for species-specific genetic markers. The result, inconclusive. The preservation methods used in 1876, glycerin and alcohol, had degraded the DNA beyond reliable sequencing. The samples were too old, too chemically altered. Modern technology hit a wall. Some fragments suggested avian DNA, which would support the vulture theory. But the results weren't definitive enough to publish. In August 2024, one of the preserved samples returned to Bath County after spending 148 years in distant collections. The Bath County History Museum now displays it in a permanent exhibit titled The Kentucky Meat Shower, a Mystery Unsolved. Visitors can see the actual meat, dark, shriveled, encased in glass, and read first-hand accounts from witnesses. The exhibit includes Rebecca Crouch's testimony, the newspaper clippings, and the scientific reports. The museum's curator stated, "This event put Bath County on the map. It remains one of the strangest documented phenomena in American history, and we may never know the complete truth. What we know for certain: something fell from the sky on March 3, 1876. Multiple witnesses saw it happen. The substance was real biological tissue. Scientists confirmed it contained lung, muscle, and cartilage. It occurred during clear weather. No similar event has been recorded since. What we don't know: the exact species of the tissue, whether it came from one animal or multiple, the precise mechanism that caused it to fall, why it only lasted 2 minutes, why it happened in that specific location. The vulture vomit theory remains the best explanation we have. But best explanation doesn't mean proven. It means least unlikely. This is just one forgotten story from American history. There are thousands more events that were documented, witnessed, investigated, and then forgotten. Erased by time. Buried in newspaper archives. If you know bizarre historical events from your state or town that deserve to be remembered, tell us in the comments below. Your story might be our next video. And if you want more forgotten American history, subscribe and hit the bell. Rebecca Crouch died in 1913, 37 years after the meat shower. She never stopped telling the story to anyone who would listen. Her grandchildren remembered her describing that day with perfect clarity, even in her final years, the shock, the terror, the confusion that never fully went away. The Crouch farm is gone now. The house burned down decades ago. The land has been subdivided and sold. Only a historical marker remains, placed by the Kentucky Historical Society in 2019. It reads, "On this site, March 3, 1876, one of the strangest events in recorded history occurred. The mystery remains unsolved." Bath County still celebrates the event. Every year, local residents host a meat shower festival in Olympia Springs, featuring historical reenactments and, yes, a cooking competition. Scientists continue to debate the vulture theory. Some accept it. Others point to inconsistencies, the perfect circle of the fall zone, the lack of reported vultures, the variety of tissue types. Perhaps we'll never know the complete truth. Perhaps some mysteries are meant to stay mysterious. But one thing is certain, on a clear spring morning in 1876, Rebecca Crouch witnessed something that shouldn't have happened. Something that science still struggles to fully explain. And somewhere in a Kentucky museum, a jar of 148-year-old meat sits as proof that the impossible sometimes becomes real. Don't forget about us.